Yes.
Yes.
My dad.
And I remember that. They were friends, came to the grocery store. Okay, well anyway, you're at our St. Mary's Church here in Laurin, Montana, and my mother lived up there in the choir, and my dad sat over there and tossed a collection plate every Sunday. But anyway, we were Mom came to church every day, and it was pretty hard not to be kind of formalized in this religion. But and I was an altar boy for a while, and I just about set the church on fire with lighting the candles in the wrong way. But that was part of life. But I guess it all started here with the folks living here. Oh, about the church. An old fellow by the name of J.B. Laurin came through here, some kind of a French guy, and he used the name Laurin, and he formed a little community stopover here between Bannock and Virginia City, and set up with ranching and land. And I think he must have brought money with him, but I don't know where he got all the bucks to put this church together. But you know. 100 years ago to build something like this was really a feature, and we were quite proud of it. But we didn't know how proud it is to have a little church like this in a small community. And in fact, it's been the envy of the whole state of Montana, I think, something this small. But going back to the family a little bit. What?
How many people lived in Laurin at that time?
Well, at the time I was in Laurin, the grade school had about, I was the only one in the class, my class, and there were about 3 or 4 other classes, but there was about 8 or 10 of us in the grade school. It wasn't very large, and we went to high school in Sheridan or Virginia City, and the bus came through here and took us out each day to Sheridan or Virginia City. So the community was kind of small. But as I remember it, I grew up in that house, the White House, as you pointed out maybe a little bit to me, but to them. But there were 2 bars and the grocery store. And I worked in the grocery store, so I had a little merchandising experience, which was kind of nice. And went on from there a little bit. But anyway, it was nice. And if you have any questions, just pop them up. But I think all of this was in the years of the war, and my brother went to Spokane and became a pilot. And he taught bombardiers during the war, and I was in high school, and the war ended. The World War II ended just about the time I was ready to graduate. But there was a lot of military feelings at that time about everything. You know, the Japanese were ready to take us over. And then the atom bomb came and ended it all. And but my brother used to fly through here once in a while. He stayed in the National Guard. He'd fly over Laurin and land in Butte and come and see us all. It was kind of neat. But it was a nice community. In the summertime, we took our shoes off and we went barefooted a whole summer long. And as a little boy, we and a couple other little kids in town, we would go from one swimming hole to the other. No swimming suits, and that was all part of living here in the country. You could do that and get away with it, but it was, once in a while we'd put suits on when some of the mothers brought their daughters and made us put a suit on. Anyway, that's the livelihood of the kids. I don't know what else to say about it. Do you have any questions? Sometimes you think of something that I don't think of, other than the homestead up here, and I don't know if they pointed it out, but it's back up in the hills here. You can still see the cabin, and I don't know if they're going to have a trip up there or not, but we're not going to go in the motorhome. But anyway, it's there, and Mom and Dad homesteaded there, and they had nothing, no electricity. No gas stoves, just a lantern, kerosene. We sold kerosene there in the grocery store for lamps, and nobody had many lights in the valley. It was all dim lights with farmers had some of them had Aladdin lights that had the pressure, and they lit up better than ones with just the plain old kerosene lights. And it was kind of amazing. I thought about those things later on in life. But Mom and Dad, homestead up there, and my dad built everything up there. He and Bill Whitford, an uncle that came out west with him. And then he went back and got Mom. And they married in Butte and came out. And for all those years up until, I guess, they came to grade school time, that they moved down to the house over there. And I was born while they lived in that area. And they had midwives, so if you're pregnant, you got to go out to a midwife someplace and have your baby. But the doctor would come around once in a while, Dr. Burns. And Dr. Burns was a great community doctor, and he liked all of us, knew all of us and everything. But he was kind of a professional drunk too. And he used this bar here in Laurin, and when he get loaded enough, they'd send him home. And down the road here, there was a long road, and he got tired, he'd fall asleep, and they'd tip over and the ditch, and we used to call it, that's the Burns ditch. And he did it, but he survived. It was kind of, I don't remember Dr. Burns when you were kids, and he was the only doctor we had. And there was one telephone that went up to this country. It was two lines, and they had 6 phones: one in Whitehall, one in Trent Bridges, one in Laurin, one in Aldern, and Upper Ruby, had all on the same line. And you rang 6 times to get Laurin, or you like 4 times maybe to get Twin Bridges. But anyway, when the call was made, it was in the store over there, and if there was somebody needed, like out of town, they'd call Laurin, whatever Betty Riggs, and then if the store owner was there, he'd pick it up, and then he'd send his helper or his workman out to find whoever it was to call the store, and they'd go back and answer the phone. It was on the wall, the little old one that you sit there and talk. But I thought that was kind of amusing. But just as an example, what we had then of what we got now.
Oh yeah, cell phones.
On the homestead land, did they clear all the rocks and
They did a lot
grow
of
stuff
clearing.
there?
It's kind of a bench land up there. About it must be around 6,500. It's right next to the timberline, which is almost unbearable for raising grade. But it was pretty good, and it was a kind of a nice field up there that wasn't too rocky. And he had they have dry land grade, and they raised grade there during the war years before that, and sold that. But my dad was a thrashing engineer, and they had the steam engines in those days, and you pull the steam engine up to a farm with this separator behind, turn the steam engine around, and there's a big belt that went around and went over to the thrashing machine, and then the horses would come in and feed into the thrashing machine with the grain that they picked out in shocks out in the fields. And it was something that they don't do now. They got a combine, and that's all contracted. But when they came in about the time I went to high school, but up until that time, that was part of our culture, was to thrash by a thrashing machine. My dad had a steam engine, and I kind of enjoyed that because he'd bring it home at night sometimes, and the boiler was still hot, and I'd sneak out there and pull the throttle a little bit. Herbert, get away from that steam engine!
How come you don't like lamb anymore?
Lambs?
Yeah.
Well, that's a little cheaper story, but I don't know about the lambs.
You won't eat lamb meat because you ate so much of it.
Yeah, well, that's true a little bit, but anyway, I might get on that a little bit, but back on the, see, where did I leave off here on the some kind of
The steam engine?
you might like to listen to, but anyway, the ranchers all were scattered around. Nobody had electricity at all, but it was kind of. And I suppose we thought it was pretty modern in those days because of the fact that you could live in a house that was heated by a stove, a heater in the a heat stove in the living room, and then a cook stove in the kitchen, and that's all we had. And there was usually, we had electricity, thank God. I don't know what we'd done out there if we were in the farm someplace, but they all got along, and we all came to town. This church had St. Mary's Parish had dances in one of the dance halls. They'd have the spring ball, the summer ball, and then the harvest ball, and everybody came and danced and to the music and at night, and the church ladies would all put on a feed, and I mean it was always a good feed, ham dinner, you know. Everybody lived for those three functions, and I think that was where the money came from, sort of along with collections to operate the church.
Dad,
It was
do you
interesting.
remember how your mom and dad met in Minnesota?
Well, I don't know if we got to that point, but Mom and Dad came out here with Bill Whitford and Uncle, and Uncle lived here in town with them. And my mother wouldn't tell me he was my uncle because she didn't like him, and I never knew he was my uncle. But he was blood uncle, you know. But he was another one of the town drunks. But he was a good mechanic, but anyway, Dad, he came out here and just kind of batched the country, you know, wanting to leave and go someplace else, get out of Minnesota, and 13, 14 kids that they wanted to get away from, and they came out here, and then Dad must have communicated something with my mom because he went back and brought her back out here. They got married in Butte, went up and started homesteading, built their cabins and their appliances up there, and along with his thrashing work, he had this ranch there, and Bill Whitford was right over the gulch a little bit, and he had a spot there too, so they were kind of a pair, but that was the size of it. And then of course they took part in Laurin church, and like I say, Mom was even when we moved to Helena, she was 75 years old, she walked from 1600 Poplar to St. Mary's there in Helena every day. You know, so there was
Did she sell the chicken eggs?
Beg pardon?
Did she turn her own butter and sell the chicken eggs and everything?
Well, we did a lot of that. Everything was, you know, we raised chickens, you know, and we had a cow. I had a cow. I milked a cow while I went to high school, so we get enough cream and money from the cream. Everybody sold their cow cream to the creameries, and they'd take and make butter, and then they'd take and sell that around with the stores. And I had a cow two cows, and I had to milk them every morning and night to get enough money to help with the school. And I don't know, I don't imagine kids like me too much being around a cow in the morning like that. Oh, God.
Did Grandma write a paper, newspaper, write?
Town crier, was she a writer for the town?
Yeah, I was gonna ask that. What did your mother do? What did your mother do while your father was working the thrasher?
Well, she just raised the children. She was busy with us kids when my dad was thrashing, and he thrashed around the country. But he'd be home. You know, the fall of the year the thrashing was probably about a couple of months. He'd help thrash. He helped everybody with their thrashing. And there were a couple other. What?
Didn't your mother write in the newspaper?
Yeah. Well, there's still the Madisonian here, and it's the local paper, and she wrote articles to the paper once a week. It was put out, or once a month. And anyway, she got her news by whoever came to the grocery store. See that so-and-so came to town on business, and so-and-so came to town, and she'd watch the bars, and she kind of kept it clean. And she had an article every week about Laurin, Montana, and it was just kind of cute. Not much, but enough to be part of a community. And that's kind of the way we grew up, but I don't know what more to add to it, except for this church was kind of a foundation for us, and I was proud of it, but Mom couldn't get me still couldn't get me out of bed every day to go to church.
Kermit, how can we picture you when you were growing up here, a little boy? What did you and your friends like to do around Laurin?
Well, most of the time, you know, in the summertime, we went out, we hit the water got warm in the creeks, and there were some nice swimming holes, and we'd go swimming all the time. And sometimes we'd hike from one to the other. But there wasn't much to do, except we did, and I always liked to build things and pound on stuff and dig holes. But anyway, we used to steal lumber and go build sheds out in the mountains, or out in the bushes, and call them our what was the name you'd use? Our forts.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now it's kind of all hard. So,
Did your bicycles used to have rope tires?
what?
Did your bicycles used to have rope tires? Dad always talked
they
about.
were balloon tires, but I'd ride a bike to. Charlie Gallagher and I would take a bike and go to Sheridan, Montana, to church.
Mm-hmm.
Or to Virginia City to visit up there. All maybe in one day, come back. But it was a nice livelihood, but nothing like a city where you had more things to do and more things to enjoy and be a part of. But you created your own life here. But it's a beautiful valley. Everybody hunted in the fall of the year up in the mountains. There was elk and deer all over, bear, and fishing was good on the Ruby and on the over in the Madison. And
These are the Ruby Mountains.
the rubies are right out in front of you there. And there isn't any waters. But in the lower part, back underneath, there was a vein, and there was called Big Springs down there in the far end, and the water just pours out of the ground. And all that water didn't come down the mountain, soaked in, and then came out later. But over here on this side, Ramshorn Creek and California Creek and Mill Creek and all the rest of them have water.
On this side is a different mountain range.
They're the tobacco roots.
Yeah, tobacco and
Yeah. And there's a lot of mining around. Of course, that was all part of this valley. It was the mining of the mountains of the tobacco roots. There wasn't any mining over the Ruby, but there's a lot of the rubies, they call it, because you can go out here and kind of scrape around a little bit, and you'll find little rubies everywhere, almost everywhere. Not so much here, but up on the benchland a little bit. There was they're little rubies, and I don't know if they were finding big ones, but they got the name Ruby, the Ruby Valley, because there are rubies, just gravel rubies. And that's amazing to me.
Right.
And,
Are they part of the Rocky Mountains?
well, this is part of the Rocky Mountains, yeah, and we're right in the middle of it. I don't know, climate here, we had winters like everybody else, but this is getting up around 5,000 feet here, and things don't grow like they do down around 4,000 in the mountains here in Montana. I don't know anybody from Montana has a garden. It's hard to grow anything up this high, and we'd only have certain vegetables that we could grow, and like cucumbers, that wasn't any good for cucumbers. They couldn't make it. They need a longer growing season. But anyway, do you have any questions about anything about the country? What do you think of this beautiful valley?
It's gorgeous. Yeah, very
Incredible
nice.
church. Beautiful church.
Yeah. I don't know who did the design on this, but it is just fantastic.
Kermit, was there a construction company that built this church?
I don't know too much about it on the history of it. That was a rectory over next door.
Oh, that was the rectory.
Right there.
Father Delane.
Oh, there were several fathers. Father Delane was a priest that baptized me and married she and I, or maybe Father Hartman.
Was that right?
Father Hartman, Father Delane.
Oh, no, it was Father Kermit, I think.
Okay, but anyway, Father Delane was involved. He came through me.
Kermit, when you went to grade school, did they have one teacher per grade, or did one teacher cover a few grades?
One teacher. We had two teachers for a while, up to the 5th grade, and then 5th to the 8th was another teacher. But we had one teacher, and it's tough to do that. I mean, you don't have the time to spend at all.
So you mean like you had like 3 different grades with one teacher?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
And then they had to go through the gamut, arithmetic, English, geography, and history or whatever. And I goofed a lot of time away just drawing pictures.
Well, they must have done a good job. You turned out pretty good.
so to speak. They talk about the hard work out of it, but it's doing something that you like, and you don't call it work. It's just activity. And
Were you married in this church, Kermit?
What?
Were you married in this church? You
No, we were
didn't-
married in Helena
Oh, okay.
at St. Helena.
Oh.
In Helena.
But you were baptized in this church?
Baptized here, yeah.
You're baptized, you had first communion in this church?
Yeah,
Confirmation?
confirmation, yeah.
Yeah.
We had a lot of things going.
How did you meet our mom?
Made
Up
it,
in Helen at Carroll College, did you meet one?
What?
You met our mom, Jean, up in Helen, you went to Carroll College?
Yeah, when I was going to Carroll College.
Didn't Seal live in Helena?
What?
Didn't Seal live in Helena and you moved into Seal?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there were three of us in the family. I'm 10 years younger than my brother and sister. And Laurin was my brother, and he was, wasn't as old as Seal, was a year ahead of him. And so Seal married Matt Solich, and they had their family, and then Laurin married Mary Jean while he was in the service down in Arizona, and that's where all those guys came, all you guys came from. And so the generations have evolved where so many of us all got so big.
After you graduated high school though, where did you go?
Well, the recruiter was at the door when we got out of the high school and wanted to know if we wanted to go in the service. So oh boy, I thought that was pretty something. So I signed up for the Navy, and a lot of us did, you know, because there was nothing to do here. I was a pretty good worker, so they liked me to work at the ranches, but the $1 a day was what you got, and that wasn't too good, but it was okay because there wasn't anybody getting any more. And $1 a day, I think it got up to $5 a day, and I think I got a job they offered me a job over in Helena for something like $15 a day, and the rancher said, well, he said, you're going to have to put your hand behind your back to take those checks. Now, there's a lot of little acronyms that I can remember.
But when you got out of the service, then did you go to Helena to live with them? Seal?
Well, I came back here, and I worked for a rancher for a week or so, and the job came up in Helena that where my brother-in-law and Seal, my sister, and a cousin there lived there, and they had an opening, so I left and went to work as a roofer and a sheet metal worker. And that was good. I mean, it's funny how I bet you all have some kind of stories you can tell about how you got from grade school to married life and a husband and children.
Yeah, but we're not sharing those with anyone.
Okay, but you can find it was a tough route. There's a route that we all follow.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey Kermit, my dad said that when he served as an altar boy here, the priest's socks used to smell pretty bad, and he and his usher, his other little boy next to him would sit there and laugh, and our parents would be real embarrassed of them because they're laughing at the stinky socks the priest had. Did you ever have that experience?
I was laughing at the.
When they were altar boys,
Stinky
at the priest's stinky socks.
Well, I don't know.
Guess you didn't smell his socks, huh?
I served in the summertime. We didn't wear shoes, and the priest would go to the different towns to say mass because they only had the whole area was small, too small for all of them to come to Laurin. So we went to Ennis, and he found me going to some place to go swimming, and so I was barefooted. And I served, and that lady got out of church in Ennis, and she said, you know, your feet are just black on the bottom. Yeah. I don't know if that was a compliment or whether it was
How old were Stella and Grandpa John when they moved to, when they left here? Did they go to Helena when they left here?
Yeah, they stayed, and on the little 20 acres, another little spot they lived in, 20 acres out here, and they got pretty old like the rest of us, and Seal said, come to Helena and we'll help you with your old age life, and they didn't have anybody to draw to or for comfort, you know, and nothing like being, really, there isn't anything to being around your children. There's, you might say, well, I hate to, and I hate this one, I hate that one, but that's not true.
Yeah, didn't you work and put the money in their name so they get some social security?
What?
You worked cleaning that bar, and you put the money in John, your dad's name, so they would have some social security.
I didn't quite get that.
You worked at a bar in Helena and
Oh, yeah.
put it
Well,
under
I
your
don't-
dad so that
that's
he'd
way
get the
illegal.
Social
I don't like to
Security.
talk about that.
That's okay. There's nobody from the IRS around, so you're good.
You work for somebody to help them get Social Security in their name, and I was doing the work. I guess that's a gift. I don't know.
That's what we're calling it.
I know I didn't see any checks. They went to my folks, and they finally got Social Security, $50 a month. But that was another thing too that was kind of humbling to me. When I went to the service, I took them as dependents, and they got $50 a month while I was in the service. And then I got the GI Bill, and I'll be darned if they didn't give me $50 a month for them while I was using the GI Bill. That's pretty nice.
And Laurin-
They didn't have a dime, and that came in pretty handy.
And Laurin did that too.
Yeah, and of course Laurin he sent money up from Arizona all the time for mom and dad. So it was a matter of helping them out in every way we could. And he just did it automatically, you know. He pulled it out of the piano, some piano deal somewhere. Yeah. Sold pianos.
Kermit, my dad said that when he grew up here, he says he and Seal and your dad and mom were so poor,
Yeah.
they didn't know they were poor. The whole town was poor.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But when you grew up 9 years later,
Yeah.
there were different people here, and you knew you were poor.
You had an outhouse and you had to use the Sears and Roebuck catalog, right?
Yeah, you know, that's something.
And you had to
That's
hold,
getting into it. We couldn't afford toilet paper. We used a Sears and Roebuck catalog. And when you run out of those black sheets that were soft, the ones that they had the ladies' clothes in and the clothes, was a stiffer paper. You couldn't use that. You had to get another catalog.
We just crumpled it up,
There was a term they used, the Trump said down in Puerto Rico that they're kind of the toilet hole people, and we were toilet hole people. That's all we had. But I didn't mind. I mean, I guess that's why I could be very have a good feeling for anybody that you know is having a tough time, and not blame them for that.
I want to hear why you don't like lamb and you don't like
Okay, well,
and rutabagas.
Well, rutabagas, well, my dad liked to make stew, and I didn't like the rutabagas, and so I never have liked them. But on the mutton, I worked on a sheep ranch one summer, my junior year in high school, and they put me to little work with the sheep, lambing and helping bring the lambs into life and the herds, and I had to do a little sheep herding, and we had nothing to eat but mutton up in the ranch, way up in the mountains. And, you know, what else did you have? The guy, he said, we ran out of meat, and the guy got down and he said, well, I brought some mutton back up.
Oh, yuck.
But that's what we ate.
Well, our dad had a hard time with chicken. Yeah, Mom would never cook chicken for Dad. He didn't like chicken. No.
You can get of course, the mutton, you know, it's nice and hot, it's fine. If it's a little bit cold, it dries up and sticks to your mouth, you can't swallow it. It's got a fat that solidifies real fast.
You know, been in the Navy, you don't like mutton either. Oh, that's what I heard.
Don't you guys have any questions?
Just enjoy the stories.
So when are we getting out of here?
Yeah. No, we're loving
I'm
this.
thinking if we have a few more questions, that would be good, but I know a lot of people have a long ways to go this afternoon, and we still want to see the homestead.
Well, when
So-
was the homestead
they introduced, when was the homestead sold? Is that in your data file? When the family, their parents, was it their parents who bought the homestead?
No, it was my aunt.
Your aunt?
What year was that?
Okay, you know what year that was? No.
So I think in
Here,
the deed,
it comes back to me that Coley Camel was that the daughter of Coley Camels? Or a son or somebody with the Camel family?
Holy Camel was the one that bought
Oh, they had a ranch down here. They were really good friends of the folks, the Camels. They played cards together, things like that. That was the one thing that they do a lot of. They have little card parties, you know, there'd be a Saturday night card party and they'd go to each other's places and play cards. And then have a lunch afterwards, you know. But,
to answer that question, I think that on the deed, it showed that land changed hands around 47 or 49. And I think shortly before Stella and John moved to Helena. Does that sound right?
He can't